Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar on sustainability in action, leading the way to a sustainable future. A couple quick reminders before we start. This webinar will be recorded and emailed out to you within a few days. It will also be available in our video library on the Symmetry website and on our YouTube channels. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions during our presentation, please type them into the questions box located at the bottom of the panel. So a little bit about Symmetry. We create and provide technology solutions and services for design, engineering, construction, owners, and manufacturing businesses. We empower people to work smarter for a better future by ensuring they have access to the expertise and technology they need to improve their performance and sustainability. Symmetry is also Autodesk's largest solutions partner globally, and proud of it. Being an Autodesk partner is in our DNA at Symmetry. Our long experience of working with Autodesk customers has given us insight into their needs and requirements, leading to the development of some of our own Symmetry technology add-ins. But let's get to the fun part of why we're here today. So I would like to present Luke Ween, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, so like Amanda said, my name is Luke Wing. I'm a performance and innovation consultant here at Symmetry. I need to update that number. It's been a little longer than 10 plus years, pushing 15 now. But I've been speaking at AU since 2015. And I've done over 40 different sustainable building designs and achieved 2 buildings with net zero outcomes. Also, Autodesk Partner Award for the most impactful sustainability design for pACI in 2021 and for Bernheimer 2024. So some of these are kind of, being improved, they're tried and true methods. I like to kind of just put out this quote out here: reducing our levels of consumption is not only going to be, will not be a sacrifice, but it's going to be a bonus if we can just redefine the word success and what's a successful project, right? So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start with some carbon fundamentals and really to understand the issue of what we're addressing. So what are we even talking about? Well, we're going to talk about carbon, which of recent has kind of become the new C word. And when we're discussing carbon, it's kind of become a central focus in our fight against climate change, really encompassing both mitigation and adaptation strategies. So in the context of architecture, engineering, and construction, or the AEC industry, understanding carbon really means recognizing its impacts on every phase of a building's life cycle. So from material extraction, construction, and to eventually demolition or reuse. So as our market rapidly evolves, we find ourselves inundated with a flood of new terms and concepts kind of related around carbon and sustainability, right? And this can often feel really overwhelming, and it's much like trying to get like laying track in front of a moving train. So as we depict in our image here, our old pal Gromit, to navigate this complexity, let's concentrate on essential points that will bring clarity and really hopefully drive effective action to our industry. All right, so we're going to start with just a quick carbon glossary. The construction industry always has confusing terms, associated acronyms, correct? But understanding the whole life cycle carbon doesn't have to be as puzzling as all the acronyms. So we're going to just break it down real quick and explore how we measure carbon really in our industry. So first off, we're talking about CO2, and it's a measure used to report the whole life carbon within construction. It combines all the different life cycle stages and greenhouse gases into really a single number based on their impact on global warming. We also have GHG, which is the greenhouse gases. These are gases released by us that really trap in the atmosphere, and they're contributing to global warming. And how we track our materials with EPDs. Those are environmental product declarations. They're basically a standardized report on a product's environmental impact through its life cycle. I really compare these to nutrition labels. Like when you go to your grocery store, you pick up your box of cereal, you can see exactly what's in it. That's what an EPD does for materials. And the ESG is something that's kind of driving a lot of this. It's really a framework to assess our projects and the impacts on the environmental, social, and governance aspects, which is driving a lot of the demand for why we need to report some of these projects and their carbon inputs. All right. So when we're talking about the materials we use to build buildings, right? And when we're concerned with their embodied carbon, so you can think of embodied carbon as really kind of like hidden pollution. And so the first carbon is really captured and stored into these growing forests or a tree, right? You can visualize that. These trees are cut down, starting the release of this carbon emission process. They're probably drove to a mill, processed, shipped to a lumber yard. And this whole process throughout this whole time is really emitting carbon, which is now tied to your piece of lumber. So when you buy that lumber, it's not just about how much energy you're going to use, constructing with it, but it's about how much energy was utilized and CO2 was released to actually create that piece of dimensional lumber from a tree, right? So imagine all these products, if you could see a little cloud of pollution that really linger over these products based on how they were made, that's the embodied carbon. So by understanding it, we can support the products made with fewer or smaller clouds and reduce our overall impact. And additionally, we can champion the reuse of things and stick with the clouds we already have instead of constantly creating new ones. Seems simple enough, right? But why are we really concerned with embodied carbon? Well, currently embodied carbon is making about 49% of the building's carbon footprint. The other half is operational. And we can get into that a little bit more later. But as we know, it's important to understand when we're looking to address embodied carbon before it's too late. We really know the industry has had a huge push on operational carbon or energy reduction, right? So our systems are becoming more efficient, we're designing better, and we're really taking advantage of these passive and active strategies. So our focus is going to shift over time to embodied carbon. So this is going to take a little bit of time, but unless we start specifying and requiring our teams to provide EPDs on these materials, we're really going to be hard to start reducing our embodied carbon along the way with our operational carbon to meet carbon neutral goals, right? So that's how we get carbon or net zero. So let's just discuss a little bit what's driving decarbonization in our industry. Firstly, environmental impact. Our sector is a major player in carbon emissions. I think we're responsible for just over 37% of the global output, which is kind of ridiculous. So we lead in greenhouse gas emissions, which is really a significant concern. Next is regulatory compliance. Governments are imposing stricter rules to reduce emissions. So staying compliant is crucial as these regulations evolve. And then demand and reputation. Clients and investors prioritize sustainability. Meeting their expectations is really key to maintaining relationships and financial support for these projects, right? Also, a lot of firms are taking it in as individual responsibility, and this is very critical. So each of us really contribute to lowering emissions and making every effort count. And now with that, we do have to consider kind of the cost reductions and efficiency of sustainable practices. They don't just benefit the environment, but they also enhance profitability over time. And that's something easily we can convey to owners. So we're looking forward to future growth and adaptation, and these are going to be essential really to embrace sustainability. It's vital for long-term vision and to understand the viability and be able to expand and develop new services off this. It's going to give us a competitive advantage, and the organizations that really adopt this are going to be practicing leading edge innovations, and they're going to have a strategic advantage over their competition. So all of these are driving us to a greener future. So let's a little bit discuss about our vision drivers that are really pushing us from a plan to action to a real commitment, and it's as an action leader is clear, right? So it's equally crucial to maintain the clear vision, and our commitment revolves around these really fundamental principles. First, we're going to start with shifting from words to action. We're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to start doing things. One of my favorite quotes is slow motion is better than no motion, right? Prioritization is the real change, and this is committing to actual sustainable practices, right? We're going to overcome inactivity and address the inertia within the organizations, and we're going to start measuring our progress. We're going to set benchmarks and start tracking performance. This will all lead to our global impact, and so our actions will compete or actually contribute to a global sustainability. And so our vision propels us forward, moving beyond just theoretical discussions and actively let's instigate change and advance sustainability within the decarbonization efforts within our built environment, right? So what is LCA? Let's dive into that. So we're aiming to really support you guys into understanding what LCA means and really clarify all these terms and what the vision is. So when we mention terms like sustainability, we're really talking about your overall vision. And decarbonization is just a strategy to achieve the goal of net zero, right? And LCA is going to be how we measure it. So you can think of all these as interconnected puzzle pieces, really shaping our vision moving forward. And so your journey is going to start by helping you and your staff really integrate all these elements into business as usual, right? So I keep saying life cycle assessment or LCA. Let's understand a little bit more what that means. So when we're talking about LCA, you can imagine maybe buying that piece of lumber that we were talking about earlier to build with. It's not really that price you just pay for that lumber or the material. It's the energy and the pollution that went into making it, correct? So we kind of described that. LCA is investigating the whole life of the product. So from where the materials are harvested to when the product is used, when it's reused, and possibly finally disposed of, right? And so this helps us see those hidden impacts, making smarter choices. And it's really like reading the back of the book versus reading the whole book, right? And it really helps us specify and understand where these products go and how we can use them better. And so in the image you see here, the tree gets built into dimensional lumber, could be reused and reclaimed for from flooring. But at the end of that life, it still has other cycles. It'd be ground up into sawdust, which is used for multiple things, and including even mulch. So we need to start considering what kind of materials we use and what their impact through the life cycle is. And that brings us to this. Now that we have a better understanding of the kind of the LCA, the goals around LCA, we're going to dive into what the life cycles are and evaluate how it's broken down. It's crucial to really recognize as your role as designers within the assessment progress. When specifying our materials, our focus really lies in evaluating their life cycle impacts is really A1 through A3. So during this phase, we really assess how materials are extracted, transported to the manufacturers, how the energy is consumed during production, and our specifications are playing a pivotal role in guiding contractors towards procuring the sustainable materials. So as they move on to stages 4 and 5, the responsibility really shifts to the contractors or the overseer of whoever's building and tracking the materials and the assembly of those materials on site. So that transitions us really into the maintenance and use stages of the building life cycle, which is known as phase B. So without a really robust FM&M model or a CMMS system in place, it becomes really challenging to monitor these activities and track your carbon impacts during these stages. So oftentimes tools rely on a lot of predictive assumptions based on industry averages to really kind of try to comprehend and digest some of these potential impacts. So I know it's tempting to really scrutinize every detail, but it's essential to focus on kind of the broader picture and let's identify significant opportunities for impact. So avoid getting lost in minor calculations and concentrate on achieving your overarching goals of reduction. And so that's where we come in trying to fill some of the industry gaps. I think a lot of firms, it's such a complex topic they get in their own way, right? And so I'm sure you guys can all visualize this life cycle of iteration. It's currently most of our clients' biggest issues. And it's that tedious loop of design iterations where you baseline, optimize, benchmark. But oftentimes the design progresses too quickly for your team really to leverage this information and integrate it into the design. So with the pACI, which we're going to talk about today, we're really trying to break that loop. And we're going to keep the design team informed throughout, ensuring there's zero holdback on design feedback. And it's really not an animation. We want you guys to think of this as a revolutionary way to design. You know, we're bringing the information to you earlier so you can leverage it sooner. By doing that, right, considering the sustainability factors really from the outset of a project, we shape the buildings and the products and how we reduce these carbon footprints, right? This only benefits the planet, but it benefits more to your pocket. It's cost effective and they're efficient outcomes, right? So with the power to influence emissions throughout our life cycle, our choices today really have potential to shape the future and the generations beyond that. And as the opportunity to make a positive impact on our environment through informed decisions and responsible decision-making at every step through the design journey. So as we progress through those design stages, the cost of changing something in our design, basis of design, goes up. And the opportunity to influence our design goes down. This is why we need to move our design studies earlier in the design process so we can actually get these sustainable attributes built into the project. So how does that kind of fit in today? We've gone through this, you've seen the LCA. Now let's focus on that, really on how our solution, the pACI, which we're going to break down a little bit more, addresses these early design stages for the A1 through A3. The pACI is really designed to help designers baseline their designs and allowing them to focus on optimizing material selection. So it handles the tedious, time-consuming tasks of the initial mapping based on your standards and your office specifications. This will enable your design teams to identify and address all the carbon violators early in the process and providing your team enough time really to develop the new specification, ensuring the proper materials are going to be purchased, right? Contractors are going to procure the most affordable, available, and effective material they can get, right? So for the exploration phases of design, we leverage tools like our very own Navigate Zero. And thanks to our exclusive partnership with OneClick LCA, Navigate Zero can utilize OneClick's extensive database, giving you access to hundreds and thousands more data points compared to the other tools on the market, like Tally, EC3, right? And as we move towards stages A4 and A5, the responsibility often shifts towards the contractors, like we said, who oversee that material tracking. So for the comprehensive reporting, they will use tools like OneClick LCA. And so we got to take a look at how we can leverage these solutions at different levels for these different objectives that we're trying to achieve as designers. So I try to represent this as easily as possible with this kind of pyramid, right? I'm trying to illustrate the different roles that contribute to the LCA and at the various stages. So at the foundation, we really have our pACI, and it's our solution designed to democratize these calculations for the everyday designer, yourselves, right? This tool allows every project and every member who uses Revit to grasp and benchmark a GWP early in their design. So it's about empowering you to understand this environmental impact decisions from the get-go. Even if you have zero exposure to LCA, you can run with these tools, right? Or these solutions. So as your skills grow, your office skills grow, demand increases, we can look to the second tier, right? Right there in the middle. This is where our specialty teams come into play. These individuals may have a deeper understanding of LCA, theory, and even the processes behind them. So the everyday designers have set up the foundational pieces with the pACI. We've made initial decisions. We can now take these experts and task them with really mapping new EPDs based on these specifications that we provided, and really focus on making significant impact or get into the project, right? So they're going to investigate materials, they're going to optimize them and modify the specs accordingly. So you can really imagine the power of the pACI streamlining this process, making the work really more efficient as we decide to utilize tools like Navigate Zero or Tally or OneClick LCA, whatever that may be. But in tier 2, to conduct a full LCA and reporting beyond A1 and A3 really moves kind of importantly to the top of that pyramid. And that's represented by the builders, contractors, or whoever's running the complete LCA. Accredited professionals are involved throughout this entire process. They're really aligned with the design team at every step. So you're not replacing them, but you're really enhancing and enabling these conversations with a streamlined workflow. So you're making this entire process more accessible and efficient. So your data flows and streams through the entire process, so there limits the rework. And that pyramid kind of illustrates a collaborative approach as well, where each tier complements the other. And the pACI at the foundation supports it for everyone to make informed decisions from the moment they start in Revit. The second tier optimizes these baselines on design changes. The APs or the contractors, depending on contract, may even have a separate LCA model for their as-builds based on submittals, right? So this is a design model, what you guys are really working on. And so even if we have a more collaborative contracts in place, leveraging our solutions will prevent data loss, and our solutions leverage the industry-leading database thanks to OneClick LCA. So that's how we're going to optimize and streamline this all the way through the design process. And what that's going to look like is a little bit more like this. So we're going to drill down on how the pACI fits in to the design process. So the pACI is not really just this acronym we're throwing out there, but it's really key to unlocking a streamlined workflow. So the pACI is doing all the heavy lifting And then you can pass it off to another intermediate tool like Navigate Zero to take the lead, leveraging all this groundwork we laid out. So what does that mean for you and your teams? Well, we set up an organizational profile. We load all your assemblies in, and imagine having a template for each wall, floor, roof, ceiling type that you use in a project. All of this meticulously vetted out, built out to a level 450 or 500 model in the LCA. We're considering pieces that you guys don't model, vapor barriers, tiebacks, rebar, grout fill. And so that takes a ton of time, and it's very meticulous for your team to baseline your designs. And what we're trying to do is give your teams less to think about and nothing to map, right? So we're taking the complexity out of the initial mapping, your baseline process, and this is really where the magic comes in. Most tools pull all relevant elements from any building, inundating your design teams with a sea of information, right? Any design can have 2,000 plus materials. It can become overwhelming, and with too much data, you can get out of scope pretty quickly, or simply just get confused and go down a rabbit hole, leading to inactivity, right? So we offer this refined process where we vet the specifications, we map your material library accurately, and integrate them back into your Revit template. So your design teams then just focus on what truly matters, making impactors and specifying those changes in the project specs, right? So when your client is leaning towards a predictive LCA or opting for a full building LCA services, like with OneClick LCA and the contractors tracking the submittals and your reporting, this approach really ensures a seamless transition. And it's about empowering your team, again, to concentrate on the essentials and making their workflow more efficient, letting designers be designers. You guys aren't carbon, you guys aren't the APs or the carbon specialists. You guys are designers, design, and we'll try to make that easier for you guys. So the pACI is really going to be a game changer in that process, we feel. So you're like, that's fantastic. What the heck is the pACI? I've heard you say this maybe 1,000 times, and you're going to hear it maybe 300 more, but let's dive into it. The pACI stands for the Predictive Assembly Carbon Index, and it's really in the title, right? It's a solution to effortlessly streamline your carbon calculations in your project templates, allowing your designers to focus on your creative work, right? And it's just a baseline of a GWP built into your template for you. And so we're going to get a little bit into the foundational work and how to obtain a pACI value. And so this crucial steps, understanding the environmental impact of our design. So we're going to take a little bit closer look at what really goes into this process. At its core, the foundational work really involves going through intricate details, specifications that you guys provide to us for a project. We align these specifications, the material assets, all this stuff that's being utilized, which becomes a crucial step for our solution, right? And so we're utilizing the OmniClass master format, and we're aligning your specifications, your tagging, your noting, and your material library. So what does that entail? Well, because the naming materials include aspects of the key metrics specified in project details, it's more than just a data entry task. It's a thoughtful process that really helps us understand the nuances of your project, that really help understand the materials that are involved and the specifications outlined. And so that's important because this upfront work sets the stage for us making accurate and meaningful mappings once we get into an LCA software. So we're creating this foundational aspect which your entire environmental assessments will stand, and it will help you and support you no matter which route you go. So now that we laid out kind of the foundational work, the next phase is that material mapping. And to really illustrate this, let's just consider this wall assembly and take a closer look at what it takes to map just one material from this wall assembly. So that box just circled a concrete, ready mix 5,000 pSI. As you can see, the material mapping really involves a systematic approach to understand the environmental impact of each of these materials, right? So by circling the concrete, you can see we have over 101,000 data points. If that animates correctly, there we go. And from there, we can maybe limit it a little bit more, maybe down to just 35,000 assets by understanding this is a wall assembly. And we're going to look at ready-mix concrete for external walls, right? And once we do that, we'll see the entire list of all 35,000 potential EPDs we could utilize that meet our search. Now, this is where it really gets interesting. Your team's going to spend a lot of time reading through all these, comparing these materials that look very similar, but are they aligned to your specification? That takes a whole nother step into this process. So even once you narrow it down to 2 or 3 EPDs that look like they're aligned to your specification, once you go and investigate these EPDs, you may understand that they are vastly different. And even though that they may seem to be similar here and have similar face value metrics, once you dive into the EPD, you'll understand that no 2 EPDs are written the same. So where you extract this information, the little details within this EPD, they matter and they will impact the cost or your predictive LCA for the project, right? So we're trying to do as much of the upfront work as possible and aligning it to what you're specifying, what the contractor is going to build based off the worst case scenario. That way we can start making impactful improvements and understanding the metrics we need to include in our specification based off what kind of EPDs we're going to be finding. So we went through just one material, but we did that for each layer of this wall assembly, which happens to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers. So that may take a day, a half day, depending on how comfortable they are with selecting EPDs, how distracted they get, how many people tap on their shoulder. But once you do that, we can now baseline this wall type based on your base specifications. We're not optimizing anything. We're telling it like it is. Our embodied carbon footprint for this wall is 542 tons per the 100 square feet. How are we going to fix this? Well, after baselining this pACI, we have to look at how we've integrated into our Revit templates. So now as designers design, we can see these impacts via schedule, right? So we pump this information back into your Revit template, creating custom parameters in your schedules and in your wall types that now will calculate the GWP value as you draw, right? Now, what your team can do is instead of mapping all those materials, you cut that process completely out of what you're doing. So your team can focus on this process of saying, hey, that piece of insulation right there is our biggest violator. It's costing us 4 tons of carbon per 100 square feet, and it's by far the biggest impactor of this assembly. What happens if we investigate that and swap it with a more efficient piece? You know, we take the XPS out and throw blown insulation there. Well, we can in certain instances, we've reduced the one wall type has reduced the entire project's GWP by 40%. And so we typically break this up for firms in a good, better, best breakdown. But this hit just a good, better, which is when one material is replaced, and best is when you're looking at multiple materials. And so with just a better solution, we have reduced 40% of our GWP, which that will satisfy a lot of your lead requirements, BREEAM requirements, REBA, whatever you're reporting to, or even internal carbon reduction goals. That looks great when you're presenting that to a client. Showing them the work you can do early on, costing them less money in order to reduce their carbon goals, so they can actually, make money and be proud and boast it. There's premiums to their properties, and they're paying less tax incentives, right? So here's this graph again. And I just want to end it on this, and I just want to show it one last time, but overlay it with a little bit of how the workflow works. The pACI is a star conceptual, even into schematic design. But from there, you want to, if you're not reporting, or if you are reporting even, you want to pass it off to another tool like Navigate Zero, OneClick LCA. You can even use TallyCat to optimize these assemblies. The only issue with TallyCat, it only has 53,000 data points or 56,000 data points compared to the 250,000 data points available through OneClick LCA. Or further, right? Depending on what we're looking at. The pACI goes right into Navigate Zero. Those assemblies can be loaded in. And if you do need to report this or work with an AP or contractor, those data points directly import into OneClick LCA, streamlining the whole process. The pACI can be built out directly into OneClick LCA for you on your organizational dashboard by us as well. So you don't even have to have the intermediate tool if you are reporting for ESG goals, or BREEAM, or LEED, etc. TallyCat is focused just on A1 through A3, kind of like Navigate Zero as well, and the pACI. So they do have an end of life when they stop becoming as relevant to a project, and you need to look at tools like OneClick LCA or something more robust to understand the entire lifecycle impacts and report these metrics. So that's why we wanted our solution to feed into OneClick opposed to being siloed, and what can we do with this information afterwards? So just to sum it up, to really make changes in our practice, we need to simplify the complex and really democratize these sustainable practices. And that's all I have for you guys today. And we'll end it off here with oh yes, if you have any questions, sorry, connect with us and use this email, contact us@symmetry.com, or reach that number and we'll reach out and get in touch for next steps as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke. I appreciate it. So we did have a few questions come in. Let me pull up my questions box. So how does the pACI specifically integrate with our existing Revit workflows? And what kind of training or adjustments will our design team need to effectively use it?
No, great question. Okay, so the best part is that it integrates directly into Revit. So I often try to tell people it's like when you purchase Revit, it's a fantastic tool, perhaps out of the box, but it works even better once you have an advanced refined template that optimizes those workflows and processes. So the pACI is the same kind of thought process. It's going directly into your template, leaving your people with less to think about. And on top of that, the very minimum training, I think there's an hour-and-a-half training that just explains the basics of carbon, what this parameter means, and how we can leverage it and take it even further.
Great. Can you explain a little bit more about how the pACI works alongside other LCA software tools like Navigate Zero and OneClick LCA?
Oh, that's a good one. So I'll just go back a couple of slides just to kind of show this. I may not explain this too well here. Here it is. Okay. So basically, the pACI really is supporting that A1 through A3, which tools like TallyCat, EC3, or our very own solution like Navigate Zero do. But the pACI is that foundational aspect. It's the step before, but it leads into that, and it's leveraging the OneClick LCA database. So if you can imagine an arrow from the OneClick back to the pACI, we're leveraging that robust database from day one, and there's no stop start in the information. So it will flow through Navigate Zero to OneClick LCA if that's your choice, or you can go directly into the OneClick LCA and start leveraging the full lifecycle assessments. Did that help a little bit, hopefully?
Awesome. Made sense to me.
Oh.
One more question that came in. Can you provide examples or case studies of how the pACI has been successfully used in other projects to reduce carbon footprints and improve sustainability outcomes?
Oh, absolutely. First one that comes to mind is one of our recent clients, the one that won this sustainability award was Bernheimer Architecture. I mentioned in the beginning. These guys really took the pACI. They made it their own. They added additional parameters and calculations. They added sheets and visualizations along with it. And I believe they were able to, provide and prove GWP reductions on every single project by just changing one specification. And so, yes, these are minor steps, but they're minor steps in the right direction, which kind of add up to bigger steps in the end. And for that, they were recognized as part of one of the most sustainable impact awards for that project we did with them. So I believe that's on our website. I don't know if we want to drop it in the chat afterwards, or maybe in the follow-up if they want, we can send it out. But it does highlight how the pACI was leveraged.
For sure, that's a great idea. I can include that case study and when I send out the webinar recording. So
Thank you.
that looks like all the questions we have. If you do have any additional questions, again, you can reach out to us at contact us at symmetry.com. You can call us. Definitely check out our website to learn more about the products and services we offer. If you guys are ready for that next step, Luke, what can they expect?
Absolutely. So once you guys reach out, we'll try to set up a call with you guys, get an introduction call. We really don't like to provide out of the box solutions, so we want to understand your guys' needs, what kind of tools you use, how the organization's set up, and then we'll set up maybe a more in-depth discovery session. Make sure we have our scoping alignment done. By then, we'll have hopefully a nice tight proposal ready to review, and then we can kick off the service and get you guys underway with your sustainability journey.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Luke, you coming in here to talk to us. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers.